Poverty is not just the absence of money, but the absence of opportunity. And the United States is a country where you have both freedom and abundant opportunities. And moving to the United States has given me both. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. I came from a close-knit family. I was the third of four children. And the best thing that my parents gave me was the gift of education. Even though I came from a poor family, they gave me education with the instruction that this is the tool that will help me to dig my way out of poverty and ignorance. But what my parents did was that they instilled in us the value of faith, hard work, and not giving up. They made us realize that if you put in the work, you will definitely get the reward. I came without a dime in my pocket. All I had was big dreams, determination to succeed, and the resilience. I got my first job at the age of 14. My job was on a construction site. My duties were to move concrete on a large pan from one end of the construction site to another one. I worked on that day from around 6 in the morning to about 7 at night. At the end of the day, the employer refused to pay me. And the reason was because she did not authorize the foreman to hire me. So I worked from sunup to sundown and didn't get paid. That tore up my spirit. And from that moment on, I decided that I was going to become a lawyer. And I was going to use every ounce of strength within me to fight against injustice, regardless of how powerful the opponent is. I am a man that worked my way up from nothing. I know what it means to feel like you're being unfairly treated, and I'm the person that can stand up to opponents regardless of how big or how powerful they are.
Welcome to this episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel Olowale. My guest today is a woman with coats of many colors. She's an artist, she's a writer, she's a mother, she's also a woman who has donated kidney to her husband. So I don't even know which box to place her. But I'm just glad to have her on the show today. Her name is Temi Ayodeji. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Wally. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
having
for.
me.
Can you tell us a bit more about you? Who's Temi Ayodeji?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction. Just to add some things to that list, I am also a business owner. The name of my business is Temi Fine Art, and I started my business about 5 years ago officially. And it started by accident, actually. You did mention that I am a mother of a son who's on the autism spectrum. That's very true. My son actually uh, was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 years old suddenly. He was born with no issues, no problems whatsoever, which a lot of parents who are in my situation have expressed. And we were on a trip to Hawaii. And the day we landed in Hawaii was the day that he lost his voice. And when I say voice, I literally mean voice. So it's not that I'm mixing my words, it's his voice. Uh, Fast forward about 10 years later, I had to sacrifice my career. I used to be working in occupational therapy as an occupational therapy assistant. I loved my career. In fact, I was actually on my way to start my PhD program when my son changed. So I knew God was in control because he knew that there was no way I could go to school and also have a child who, at the age of 3, was not functioning the way he normally was functioning. So I sacrificed my career to stay at home with my son to homeschool him. And I'm so thankful to God that I did that because I used my expertise in OT to help him. I did a lot of homeopathic remedies with my son. I never medicated my son. That's not to say for parents who medicate their children are wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just sharing that was my preference and I stand by it. My son had improved a lot over the years, but there was one thing that he was struggling with, and that was his ability to focus and concentrate whenever I was teaching him. And I refused to give him medication for that, and I wanted to find other holistic or alternative ways to help him with that. And I mysteriously stumbled upon research on Google. And I love science, anything related to science. And I studied, the article, and I looked for more articles on it. And the article was simple. It was a study done on an artist called Jackson Pollock, the late Jackson Pollock. And it was said that his paintings reduce people's stress levels by up to 60% within the first couple of minutes. But they also noticed that within his paintings, it actually helped individuals improve their focus and concentration. That was the line that got my attention because I thought of my son. And I said, okay, let me see Jackson Pollock's paintings. His style is completely different from my style. And just an FYI, my first degree is in art and design. I have 4 degrees, by the way. So my first is in art and design. And I said, you know what, I can reproduce this, but I don't want to reproduce this simply because I studied in Nigeria, and they teach us how to do realism and hyperrealism. His paintings were abstract, had nothing to do with how I was trained as an artist. So I prayed, and I just wanted, God to just share with me, how can I produce these kinds of paintings? And within the study, it just talked about images that reduce stress or images that increase focus and concentration. And I decided to go ahead and dive into abstract and embed those images within my paintings. And Lord and behold, it actually helped my son improve his focus and concentration. I didn't even know that it was helping him. It was somebody else that came to our home that noticed it. And that was how everything started. So I've been using my paintings ever since doing that. But I also realized that my paintings were helping my husband, who's a physician, um, reduce his stress levels every day when he came back home from work. And around that time, my husband was struggling a lot with his own health. But God bless him, the world couldn't see what he was going through. He actually had renal failure. He also had cancer. I can share this, although I get a little bit choked up, simply because he's my husband. These were struggles that we had as a family, but we were resilient. He was resilient. So every day he came back home from work, and thank God I created the environment within our home filled with a lot of these paintings that I started to create. And it affected everyone in a way that I really wasn't thinking much about it. But there was a lot of peace at home, thankfully to God, but there was peace because it was beautiful. And um, I am just so thankful to God I could do that. And right now within my business, what I'm doing is actually helping doctors and other healthcare professionals reduce their stress levels and increase their overall productivity, learn how to obtain or get what I refer to as work-life balance. That's what I do right now because I've lived it for over 23 years. And I'm really proud about that. So that's what I do. What else would I want to add to that? Uh, I have 2 sons. My younger son is the one that's on the spectrum, and my older son is at the university here in Birmingham. So that's what I can add for now.
Oh, thank you. And tell us about your upbringing growing up in Nigeria, being the only girl among boys. What was that like?
Well, I left Nigeria when I was 2. We went to Canada because my dad is what we used to refer to as an international student. Our parents. Well, some are. My father is educated, so is my mom. So we left Nigeria, my mom and I, to join my father in Canada when I was 2. I left Canada, came to the States, speaking predominantly French, and I knew how to speak English, obviously, but when I came to the States, Spanish is a second language, not French. So the French went out the window, and I was forced to learn Spanish. And then less than 3 years later, we went back to Nigeria. Nigeria, Spanish is not the foreign language, it's French. So I was a pretty confused child, let me put it that way, when it came to foreign languages. Um, but being the only surviving girl, and I say surviving girl because I had two siblings, two sisters, who unfortunately passed away when I was very, very young. Uh, it was hard in Nigeria simply because of the fact that I quickly learned that and I don't want to say that still happens till today, but my childhood, the first boy or the boys are the ones that gain the recognition, the admiration. They're the ones that technically decide. And if you're a girl and you're the first child, you literally have to follow what your younger brother says. And I'm sorry. I mean, I came to this earth before you for a reason. I am the head and not the tail. So it was one of the things that I had established with my personality very, very quickly, that I won't be put on the side. Um, I thank God that my brothers did not grow up with that attitude of, well, you're a girl. No, they never did. The respect was there. That's something that my dad and my mother made sure existed within our home. They respected me. I respected them as my younger siblings. They were very, very protective of me. I'm actually 5 years older than my immediate younger brother, and it was okay. I just realized very quickly that as the first child, I had to lay down the footprints of what a successful individual should be. I had to make sure that they had someone to follow. I had to ensure that whatever it is that I did was at the highest level, but encourage them to exceed what I have accomplished. Because with that, I can celebrate them, and I can tell their children too that this is what Auntie did. So you can be like your dad and do better than Auntie. So that was something that I've done, and it's been great. My brothers are here in the United States. They're all doing well in their respective capacities, and I love it. I don't have to share my mother's jewelry or girly stuff with anybody else. It's just me.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
the
me.
advantage for you being the only girl.
I'm the only girl even in my home. I only have boys and my husband. So it's fun. I'm a tomboy, although I'm dolled up like this. I'm very tomboyish in my ways, but I can also be a woman, in terms of educating other young girls or my friends, who are women, who are married, who have kids, on, what our roles are within the home, within society. So it's been great. It's been a blessing being the only girl.
Thank you. Let's talk about your book, The
Sure.
Art of Autism. That sounds very personal.
Mm.
Can you tell us what inspired you to pen this book?
My son,
Okay,
he's the one that inspired me.
okay. And from your journey, because you indicated that your son was born with all, well, I don't want to use the word normal or abnormal, but you know what I'm saying, without any sign
Mhm.
of autism or any kind of neurological disability.
Mhm.
Then you took a trip to Hawaii. He was 3 years old.
Yeah.
He was talking, playing with his brother, responding to you, and just being a normal 3 year old. Then you took this trip. Tell us what happened on that Hawaiian trip.
All right. So the book, I went into detail, and I believe you know that it will grab you, if because and the good thing is I'm actually having the audiobook done. If you've read the book, and you knew how it impacted you, the audiobook is better because it will take you on that journey. So what happened is this, and I hope I can share this story without crying because it's I have to. You're making me relive it literally. So imagine two little kids, ages 3 and 4, two boys who look alike and very precocious. People thought they were twins because I dressed them alike. They loved each other. When I say love, they loved each other. And before we went to Hawaii, I had, applied to Belmont University to begin my PhD program in occupational therapy. And I had already obtained my master's degree. I was told I was going to go to the school, everything was fine. I was told to expect, I went for the interview, everything was fine. They said everything, I had all the documents, the GMAT exams, everything was fine. Expect to get your results by July, and then you can start school in August. I got my letter in June saying that I was not offered, one of the seats for the PhD program. That was devastating. In the book, I write the reason why. It was ridiculous to me, and I'm being very authentic here. And I was very discouraged, but my husband, he said, "No, don't worry, just go ahead and take the GRE exam." I've already given it away. They said I took the GMAT instead of the GRE, which was mind-boggling to me, but anyway. And I said, "Okay, fine, I'll go ahead and prepare." And I was really sad. My husband said, "Let's go on a trip to Hawaii, somewhere different, somewhere new. It'll be a trip of a lifetime. We can go with the boys, and then we can come back home, and then I can go ahead and prepare for these exams." So we arrived in Hawaii. I talked about what happened on the plane in the book. It was a funny experience. So we got to Hawaii, and me being the mother that I am, I didn't trust the food in Hawaii. And people would say, "Wait, why not?" Because it wasn't, you know, Alabama where I live. And my husband said, "Don't worry about it. It's the same thing. The milk comes from the same cow. It's just packaged differently." So we went to the local Walmart, bought our groceries, got back home, had settled in. And my boys like to drink chocolate milk every evening religiously. And they would always stand in front of the microwave, and I'll put the cup in the microwave, press the 30-second button, and they both would take turns doing the countdown. And whoever got to zero first would get the milk. Now, I knew who would start the countdown each day, so I would alternate it. They were young, they didn't know the difference. But they realized that, okay, today Andrew would get his milk, tomorrow it will be Matthew that will get his milk first. The day we arrived in Hawaii, Matthew was supposed to be the one to get his milk first. So I pressed the button. The boys were dancing in front of the microwave. And mind you, nothing was wrong up to this moment. So bear with me. I pressed the button. You know how the machine goes on. So the 30 digit number popped up. Andrew immediately said 30. Matthew said nothing. Andrew said 28. Matthew said nothing. Excellent. All Matthew did was, and I have to demonstrate it, was, he's looking up at the microwave, and I'm on my phone, and I'm looking at him, so I pressed the 30-minute button, and immediately Andrew, my older son, said 30. Matthew said nothing. Andrew said 28. Matthew said nothing. I was baffled because never had he not responded with his brother. And all he did was just stare between the microwave because, he was shorter. So he was looking up at the microwave, staring at the microwave, and then he would look at me. He'll stare back at the microwave, then he'll look at me as though that was him counting, but he wasn't verbally saying the numbers. His older brother at that time was, trying to egg him on to count, but he didn't count. Little did I know that that was the beginning when autism basically took over. And as occupational therapy assistant back then, I had never heard of, I had never seen a child who was verbal one moment and literally the next minute or two was nonverbal. I've never seen it. And my husband said, "Don't worry, it was jet lag." Matthew got his milk. He didn't speak that night because it was jet lag. The next day was when all hell broke loose, literally. Um, we woke up in the morning, or we woke up in the afternoon because there was jet lag, and we decided to take a walk on the beach. The hotel that we stayed in was right on the beach in was it Honolulu? I can't remember. Anyway, and we got downstairs to the hotel lobby, and I had a big bag filled with, blankets and stuff should we decide to sit on the beach. And I had umbrellas because I don't like sitting directly under the sun. And as soon as we stepped out of the hotel, Matthew, I put Matthew down, and the way he screamed, I can the way he screamed, I can hear it. I thought I had allowed him to step on glass and he had cut himself. The attention of the people on the beach, the people in the hotel, everybody's eyes just swarmed at us. And I quickly picked him up, and he held on to me for dear life. I mean, when you say child, for those of you who have children, your child is scared and they squeeze you as if they can tear your clothes off of you. I was confused. I didn't see any, blood on him. I didn't know what was going on. He did not want me to put him on the sand. Little did I know, that was where his sensory processing started taking place. I am so proud of myself, I can tell this story without crying. That's how it really literally started. We did take that walk on the beach. I had to carry him throughout. In the book, I talk about the fight I had with my husband on the beach, how enraged I was with him. When I say fight, I don't mean we had like a verbal altercation. It was just because he didn't know, thought I was spoiling our son by carrying him on the beach and not allowing him to walk. But I saw my son not communicating what was wrong and was scared to stand on sand. We went to Panama City Beach just 2 weeks before we went on our trip. And my son was running all over the place with his older brother on the sand. Nothing was making sense. But although the rest of that trip was very painful for me, um, as a mother, when you see a child change right before your eyes, God gave me a gift. God gave me a gift. The Saturday when we were leaving Hawaii, we were taking the red eye back to Alabama. So we had to check out of the hotel that morning, and we took a ride around the seascape. And Hawaii is beautiful. If you've never been, you need to go, and you need to go. It's a very, very beautiful island. So we went to a park, and at the park, the boys were playing. And all of a sudden, while I sat there, I was so sad, but I was always smiling because I didn't want my husband to know I was sad. He didn't know. I didn't want the boys to see that mom wasn't happy. So I really acted throughout the rest of the trip. But that moment when the boys were playing, all of a sudden Matthew ran towards me. He jumped onto the bench, and it scared the heebie-jeebies out of me. He jumped onto the bench next to me, and he squeezed me, And his brother ran towards me. Like I told you, they were like twins. And so Matthew squeezed me on one side, gave me a kiss. And then Andrew pulled me on the other side, gave me a kiss. And then immediately Matthew said, I love you, mommy. Now, and then Andrew said, I love you, mommy. And at that moment, the shock of hearing him use those three words, this kid had not spoken all week, but he was able to give me a squeeze and say, I love you, mom. And his brother did the same thing. And the excitement, I don't know what I looked like, but my husband said, look up. And at that moment, we all looked up and he captured that picture. I have that picture. And in that picture, when I look at that picture till today, there are times that I cry and there's sometimes I just rejoice. Because within that picture, you cannot tell that there was a problem. But that was a picture that my husband, thank God for him, he captured that gift that God gave me, which was to hear my son speak after 6 days. And what did he say? Mommy, I love you. I didn't hear my son speak for 12 months after that. But my son, he's 18 now. Oh, he speaks. When I sing, he says, Mom, literally, he does this, Mom, please stop singing. And I'm like, I'm going to sing because God gave me a voice to sing and to rejoice. And sometimes we sing together, So that was what happened then, yeah.
You don't realize how important it is to have a voice until you've lost it or you witness someone lose it. And that was what happened to you. You
Yeah.
know, your son losing his voice. And that word, I love you, mommy, according to you in the book, you said that was the longest sentence he had made in 6 days. And that was the last time he would tell you, I love you,
Yeah.
unsolicited.
Yeah.
And the good news is that you're able to capture that moment
Uh-huh.
in time in a photograph.
My husband captured it. Sometimes we joke around, um, and the funny thing is, I'm the photographer in our family. I'm the one always taking pictures. You can see 20 pictures and I'm in one, but I'm a good photographer. I am good in terms of the angles, the color, I'm good. But he captured that with the beautiful background, with their smile. He captured the innocence of the boys. And yes, it's one of those pictures that I treasure so much. Um, and it's a sacred picture for me. So I'm so happy that he captured it, and I'm so happy that God gave me that gift because it was a gift of hope. Little did I know, you know,
Yes.
I could have called the book "Little Did I Know," but no, it was the art of autism, because I am an artist, and it was literally about that title, like an artwork. It starts from somewhere, and then at the end, there's this beautiful masterpiece. That masterpiece is my son. And as far as the different things, the different elements that go into this painting, it's not just me as an artist, but I would say is also my God and my Lord. I am a Christian. I'm not ashamed to say it. Everything that we went through, we would not have been able to go through it and be where we are if not for him. Stumbling upon that research, he was the one that told me go on the computer and research. That's what I believe. He was one that told my friend to come visit us that day, that afternoon. And my friend said, WTF. And I looked at him like, he said the word. He said, what the bleep? And I was confused, like, what are you saying? He said, he's not distracted. And he was talking about the artwork in my home, talking, said, oh, did you go invade Pier 1 Imports? And then notice Matthew did not even, get distracted. And I said, yeah. And then I told him about the study. And we were standing right next to Matthew on the table, and Matthew didn't even look up at us. He just continued to read. And that was when my friend said, can't you see it? It didn't dawn on me. And then he said, you stumbled upon something.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you were about to start your PhD,
Yeah.
and then one thing led to the other. They didn't accept you, and then you took the trip to Hawaii. What is the importance of now you being able to start your PhD
For me,
for you and for your son Matthew?
well, okay. So I told you I have 4 degrees, right? So that PhD was going to be my fifth. And my husband's a physician. So I always envisioned somebody calling the house and saying, can I speak to Dr. Ayodeji? And I would say, which one? That was the that was it for me. Just being able to have that salutation in front of my name, or the PhD at the end of my name, signifying that I am a doctor with a doctorate degree, not a medical doctor. I always wanted that. And I also wanted something that my brothers could see as, okay, this is our sister. Although she's not a medical doctor, she's attained the highest degree, which is a PhD. And that is going to be something that they would strive to achieve. And because I've always done that. So the master's degree was where it stopped for me. I'm proud to say one of my brothers actually also obtained his master's degree. He wanted to go ahead and pursue his PhD, and I've encouraged him. You can still do it, and it's going to be something that I will celebrate when that time comes for him, should he decide to go down that path. But for me, not before this whole thing happened with my son, apart from getting the PhD, I've always envisioned having a facility, a rehab facility where I can have, different individuals come and provide them with the services with my team, as far as improving their overall, functioning and getting them back to their real world to, uh, be the mothers, the fathers, the truck drivers, the grandparents, whoever, whatever their occupation was just to get them back to performing at their highest level. That to me was my ultimate goal. But God had other plans. I don't have my facility, but I have my studio, which is where I'm talking to you right now. And I am making a difference in the world, not in the capacity that I had planned about doing about 20 plus years ago, but through my art, through sharing my story with other individuals. And I'm excited. I'm still doing something uh, in a different way. And I'm excited about it. So the PhD was important, but uh, it wasn't a do or die. And my husband has told me, several times, if I want to go back and get my PhD, I can. And I just look at him and smile, because that would really involve a lot of my, not just the mental, but the emotional sacrifice for me. And I can't serve two masters. My son has been my full time job and focus. I could not compartmentalize him so that I can focus and get my PhD. No, no. But I'm so proud I have 4 degrees, and no one can take that away from me.
So it was a blessing in disguise that you actually didn't get to start the program because it gave you the time and the chance to give your son the all the attention that he needed.
That's why I say God,
Otherwise,
yeah. God has a good sense of humor, right? That's my belief.
yeah. And coming back from Hawaii and noticing what you noticed, it's not even just noticing it. It's right there in front of you.
Yeah.
You have a healthy 3-year-old who was always playing with his twin brother, well, his brother,
Yeah.
and his parents, and then he came back nonverbal.
Yeah.
He has changed.
Mhm.
You knew that something was wrong, but you didn't have a name for it. You didn't. You suspected it because of your own professional experience.
Mhm.
What was that like? Knowing that something is wrong with a child that you love, but you don't know what it is. You don't have all the answers. What was that like?
It was scary. It was annoying. Um, it was annoying. Between scary and annoying, annoying was the number one. I'm being very honest here. Annoying in the sense that I'm looking at God, what this is literally how I was. What happened? Where did I go wrong? I've served you. I continue to serve you. What sin did my parents commit that my child is suffering for it? That was one. That was one form of anger. The other form of anger that I had was towards other mothers who knew what was going on with my son, but had, and I wrote about this in another chapter in the book, but had the audacity, and the word is audacity, to, and I'm going to demonstrate, oh, what happened? Oh, bless your heart. it, I'm thankful I can laugh today, but back then I couldn't laugh. All I could do was keep quiet. The facade that I projected and the world had was, oh, she's okay. But inside I was enraged. Then there were times I was angry with my husband because he couldn't see autism was not a diagnosis for him. He just assumed my son was spoiled because, I'm always carrying him. You get that? I'm always carrying him. Even at home, when we came back, he couldn't walk around the house barefoot. I always had to wear socks, put socks on, it's specific socks. See the sensory processing disorder? Um, and it was really, really hard. And, you know, imagine this. Imagine a kid, like I said before, that was verbal, playful, very engaging. He was now in his own world. That's the best way I can put it. He was communicating, but not with words. It was more of the and then he would start doing this so fast, uh, and then he would rock very, very fast. There was so it was He was in his own world, and one thing that he also that he lost was his eye contact. So with the eye contact, when you talk to people, no, not in all cultures, in all places, but you look at people when you're talking to them, right? That's what he used to do. But then, even when I called his name, he wouldn't answer. When I would move his face to look towards me, he would look. So assuming like you're right here, he would look. He literally avoided my eyes. Uh, that was what it was like. He wouldn't walk normally. He was lunging. When I say lunge, that's like taking big steps. And I would literally think he's going to collide into the furniture, but he never did. You know, um, and then when he was with other kids, his friends in school, in his daycare, they noticed. That's another sad thing. They noticed because you can see the kids play together, and he was just by himself. It was hard. It was hard.
It's one thing to notice that difference or differences in your son
Mm,
and accepting it and getting the diagnosis that this is what was going on? What was it like for you and your husband, and also your other son, Andrew, because he's also part of this family?
All right. So when I knew that he had autism, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Like I said, I was still trying to psychoanalyze the whole situation every day, and I had a plethora of emotions. So we had to get an official diagnosis, and we did. We had the lady from Birmingham. She came from one of the major facilities back then. She was one of the top people there. I'm sounding very sarcastic right now. So we had her come to Dothan. I was very, very grateful. We paid her to come to Dothan. Um, I refused to take my son to Birmingham to be tested by a number of quote unquote specialists, simply because of the fact that I knew he didn't have any physical issues, so he did not need to be evaluated by a physical therapist. When it came to occupational therapy, don't worry, I did that. Is like, no, we're not going to spend money on that. A speech pathologist, yes, but I need the diagnosis, you know? So we had this lady come down and she gave us a diagnosis, but she said that she came to his daycare to do the evaluation. And that was very important because being in his natural setting, she was able to see how he would perform on a normal day. Taking a child that young to a different setting to do an evaluation would not give her the actual uh, perspective of where he was, because even as adults, when you go somewhere that's different, you act differently, right? So you can imagine children, they'll do the same thing. So within his own natural setting, she was able to observe him thoroughly, and she said she diagnosed him with PDD-NOS, which means pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified. And what she told us back then was he needed to stay in a atypical environment. In other words, he needed to stay amongst kids that were kids, regular kids. She's told us specifically not to put him in special needs, in a special needs classroom, that he needed to be around other kids that were atypical so that, he could copy their behaviors and things of that nature. Now, when she gave us the diagnosis, I take that back. When she gave me, because she spoke to me and I conveyed the information to my husband, I related to him. She told me that day that he had PDD-NOS, and I asked her a question. And the question was this. I said, and I quote, "Have you ever undiagnosed children that you've diagnosed in your 30 plus years of experience?" Did you hear my question? That was a simple question. And her answer was, "Only one." And that was because that girl was misdiagnosed when by the time the girl came to her. And I told her, I'm going to paraphrase what I told her. And I laughed and I was being very sarcastic. And I think I wrote that in the book. And I said, "My son will be your second." And she smiled. She nodded. Her smile and nod was to make me feel as though I am with you. But deep down, I felt like she was saying, "in your dreams." She might not have said that, but that's what I felt. So I just let it be. And I thanked her for coming. I was crushed. I was devastated. But for once in a very long time, I was happy. I was happy. Finally, I have the diagnosis. Finally, I am not dumb. Finally, honey, I told you it's autism. Now we have the specialist who came and diagnosed our son. It's PDD-NOS. You know, we have a kid with autism. Wait, what? No one in our family, no one, and on his side of the family, on my side of the family, nobody has autism. That I'll stop right there.
You mentioned that you were crushed, devastated, but not defeated. You also mentioned, or you emphasized that no one in your family has autism. And that kind of had an effect on the way you handled the diagnosis or even sharing it because you
Mm,
kept it close to your heart
yeah.
and you did not share with anyone, not even your family members,
Mm,
that your son had autism. And you are handling the stress, the treatments. You kept everything close to you, the family. It was like a family secret. Then what changed to the point where you're now able to share it with the world?
well, the world technically knew because my son still went to daycare. They knew what was going on. He had a teacher that was amazing, who constantly gave me feedback as to things he did and could not do. In terms of sharing it with uh, the parents of the other kids within his daycare, they had observed, they had seen it, that he's different. Something is off. Something is wrong. Something is off. He's aloof. I hate that word. That's the truth. I hate that word, aloof. He's aloof, and the people within the town where they knew that went to his daycare. They knew. Family, no. And it was like it was a game of cat and mouse. Oh, can I talk to Andrew? Sure. I'll give Andrew the phone. Hi, blah, 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 blah. Very chatty young boy. He would talk. And where's Matthew? He's playing. Oh, Matthew was always doing something different because we couldn't put him on the phone because he wouldn't talk. He would make those sounds. And this was a kid that used to talk. So I didn't want to share with them because the questions they would ask would annoy me because I couldn't give them the answers because I was still looking for the answers. Why isn't he speaking? If I knew the answer to that, trust me, I would bottle up that answer and I'll sell it to the world and become a multi-billionaire. I cannot explain why he's not speaking. And our culture, there's respect when you speak to your parents, your elders. There is no way I could be rude to my parents who were asking a logical, simple question about their grandson. I would take the anger out on them. So for years, I never said anything. And my mom came to visit. There was no way I could hide it at that point. And God bless my mother. She didn't cry in front of me. If she cried, I didn't know. Until today, I never asked her. Simply because that was for her and her God to have that moment. But I trusted that she prayed. It was my father that I didn't tell. I didn't tell my dad for almost 10 years what was going on because I knew I would not hold back my anger when I spoke to my dad. And I could not afford to add to the already existing tumultuous relationship that I had with him, which was something completely different because we are close as anything right now. I just didn't want to add to something that I was already, that was already, rough. But I couldn't tell him. And my brothers, I told my brothers maybe about 8 years later, and they were upset with me because I hadn't told. And when I say upset, they were very empathetic, but they were upset that I had gone through the pain for years without having an outlet. I told my sister in laws in the UK, they were upset with me because I hadn't shared and I was going through this journey by myself. And one of the things that I told them, that was, I had reached a point, by the time I told them that this empathy that they were giving me was too much. I don't want your sympathy. I want your understanding. I want your compassion. Love, understanding, compassion, support. That was what I wanted. Not the, oh, they didn't do that. Not the, that sound, that, if it's infuriating. Because if you're going, and I just told you, what do you think I've been doing? This is the reason why I'm not telling you. And I didn't want it to destroy the relationship I would have with the family members that I was telling. But I shared with them the different things that we've been doing over the years. When I told them where he was and where he was at the moment that I was sharing it with them, they could not believe it. They're like, wait, there's no way. And I said, oh, yes, there is a way. That's the reason why I didn't tell you. And if you think it's not you, when you come visit, we'll take you to the neighbors. Our neighbors, our former neighbors, still talk about how they saw the things that so they knew him before the diagnosis, they knew him when he changed, and they knew him as he flourished. My neighbor's wife saw me one day when I was in the backyard. Remember, I told you my son, we always had to wear socks around the house because he couldn't put his bare foot down. He couldn't put his foot on sand. He couldn't put his foot on grass. He couldn't put his feet on the garage floor. And we used to live on the golf course. We had a hole right behind our kitchen. I'm happy to say that. I loved watching men struggle getting the ball in the hole. And one day I just went to the backyard with my son, and I'm like, we are going to go through a desensitization session today. Normal therapy sessions, this would be something that would take several weeks. I got on the floor. My son was climbing on me because he did not want to put his feet on the grass. And I started yanking out the grass. You don't yank out the grass when you live on a golf course, right? I didn't care. I was just yanking out the grass and I was blowing it in the air, saying, "Wee," just having fun. Because I wanted him to see that don't be afraid of grass. And as I was doing that, I'll put it in my hands. I wanted him to touch it, which he did touch like that. He didn't even want to touch it. And we played. I really messed up the backyard. Who? I did not care. She was watching me through her window. And I think we were out there for maybe about 45 minutes or 30 minutes. I don't know how long we were out there. And I mentioned I hate the sun when we went to Hawaii. I did not care. We were going to, go through this session. And after a while, he actually stood on the grass. But when he stood still, feet ajar, and he was like this because he's standing on a surface that he doesn't like typically. But he saw his mom go crazy, yanking the grass, having fun, playing, and he started to enjoy it. I wish we captured this on video. Do you know when my son started moving around me and realized that this is fun? He now ran. He ran to my left, past my neighbor's yard, down two houses, and all I could think of is a dog coming out, charging at him. And I ran, that boy could run. I did not know he could run that fast that day. And I ran after him. Stop! I wasn't, I was sitting on the floor and I had to get up to chase after him. And when I finally caught up with him, the laughter from his gut was so beautiful, and I had to hold him on my side like I'm holding a football. When you watch NFL, they're holding the football and they try to. That's how I held him, because I couldn't hold him any other way without him getting out of my grip. And that was the day we worked on grass. He had no issues with grass after that day. I told my husband, and he was like, "Really?" And I said, "Yes, I love you. I destroyed the grass." And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it."
Mm.
Oh, but then he then said, "But doesn't mean you should start destroying things around the house." So, and we left it there. We left it there. The guy came to cut the grass. He was like confused. And I said, "Oh," and I told him what I had done. He was like, "Really?" And we opened the back door and Matthew went running, and we had to go get him because they were still cut. You know how they have those machines and they can't hear. So we had to run to get him. And the man was like, he was also,
Wow. It was
Mhm.
wow. So what it was a worthy sacrifice. And
Oh, it was. And I think the grass too was excited. It had some breathing space.
you tried many alternative therapies that eventually worked. Can you share with us a little bit of some of those therapies? And if you will recommend the same to parents who has children with special needs.
All right. So I'm going to go start. I'm going to answer that question, the last one first. Okay. I am not in the position to recommend to any parent what they should or should not do with their child, because no two kids on the spectrum are the same. We all know that. I believe we all know that. But if you're new to this game, FYI, no two kids on the spectrum are the same. And what I did was I just wanted the diagnosis of autism, PDD, and OS just because focused more on what were the challenges and problems and difficulties and milestones that he needed to attain that he had not attained. That was my focus. And based on that, that was how I prioritized them. One of the things in occupational therapy, and I thank God I went through this profession, is when you're trying to get to, and I'm going to use lay terms to explain this. There's something that we do in occupational therapy, and it's called task segmentation. And what it simply means is you take a task, any task, it could be anything. It could be sitting here talking to you, okay, or getting out of bed. And we break down that task into the tiniest of functions. So, for example, um, sitting on the side of the bed, you start off by lying down. You have to turn your body to the side. You have to push up. You have to sit. You have to have balance. Your coordination has to be intact. I'm using lay terms to explain this, by the way. And then you have to, skid up to the edge of the bed. Your feet have to be planted. All those different tasks. So when it came to my son, I had to do the same thing literally with all the different things that he had problems performing. And based on that, this is something that parents can do if they want to. Based on that, I was able to determine which task or which thing did he need to do first in order to get to the next level, in order to get to the next level, in order to get to the next level. So, for example, I want my son to be able to read. But in order to be able to read, that I can hear him read, he had to have speech. And although he lost his speech, I continued to speak to him as though I was speaking to his brother. I did not. Hello. I didn't do all that baby talk. I I think because they were boys too, I didn't do that whole baby talk thing. And there was something else that I did with my son. I spoke life over him. That's literally what I did. It's what I when I say I spoke life over him. It's what people call today as affirmations. I would always say, "You are blessed. You are healthy. You're whole. You're healed." And I said it every day, continuously. I even recorded it. I put it on. Um, we had the what you call the CD. Man, I've even gone through CDs. Anyway, I recorded these things and had him listen to it because he always had a headphone on. And when it came down to the therapies, and I said my background is in occupational therapy, that was something we did every day anyway. We did speech therapy because he needed to improve on his speech. So kids on the spectrum typically do need speech therapy. Physical therapy, that depends on your child. And they can, if your kid has no physical limitations whatsoever, they won't really need physical therapy. I don't see the need for it. That's just me. Uh, there were other therapies we did that's in the book, which were therapies that my husband had said were not necessary. But for me, I wanted to do everything that I could within my power because I didn't want to look back at my life, at my old age and say to myself, what if we had done this? Would things be different? And that was the line that I used on my husband, by the way. So he went along. We did hyperbaric oxygen therapy with him. We actually bought the device at home. And I did that simply because it was expensive. Therapies are expensive, and insurance only covers so much here in the States. And doing the therapies at home was more cost effective. My husband, I literally had to, is like, applying for a loan, literally had to break everything down and explain it to him and batter my eyes and then go pray, God, let him change his mind. Um, but medication, no. Uh, he was given medication once. We went to see a therapist who gave him a psychiatrist or psychologist. Anyway, one of the two. He gave us medication to give him because he was so hyperactive in school. And the first that I gave him the medication, he was the best what I could use was he was there in front of me, but he was back to that being in his own world, just
Aloof.
aloof. And I think he was about 7 at that time. I said to myself, oh, hell no. Sorry if I can't say this on the podcast. I'm like, no way is that going to happen. So I was taking the medication, flushing it down the toilet, literally. But then I started researching essential oils. And we used to do homeopathic remedies with him for years. And that was fine. Um, in terms of the different remedies that we use, I started using essential oils for him, and that worked as well. So I'll just tell parents literally to research the different treatments that are available today. Mind you, my journey with my son, this was 15 years ago. Science has evolved. See what's available, see if it's something you can afford. I hope you have a partner in your life that will support whatever decisions that you make. And yeah, let those, if you need financial support, try to find ways that you can get that financial assistance in order to do what you need to do for your child. There's a lot of things that I did, and it's all in the book. But I don't want to recommend simply because I don't want a parent to try something and it doesn't work for their child. It's just like with homeopathic remedies. What works for my older son is not necessarily the same thing that would work for my younger son, although they're brothers. So I'll just tell parents, do your research, be very wise with whatever decisions that you make, and what anything that you do, document. I cannot stress that enough. Write the date that you started it, what you did, write your observations, and keep track for about 3 months. You'd see there's a change, and if it's worth continuing, continue with it. But when you don't document, you tend to forget where the child was, and the child might have improved, but you just don't remember. So it's always important to document. So that's one major advice that I'll give parents.
And years later, your son was retested and the
Yes.
diagnosis changed.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, there's a program we did called Brain Balance. Brain Balance is, I don't want to say it's all over the United States, but Brain Balance is a program we did in Georgia. My son and I relocated to Georgia for about 6 months. And I can talk about Brain Balance. I will take a lot of time to talk about it. But they had tested him before we started the program. They could even test him because he was that hyper and very sensitive. It's like you want to touch him, he would flinch and he would start laughing because he thought you wanted to tickle him. Anyway, he was diagnosed with autism. His numbers scored really high, but they said he had like mild autism. And after 6 months of the program, he was retested. And he'd even test high enough to fall under the I think it was the GS something 4. I cannot remember exactly the test he did. He didn't score high enough to be considered as having autism. So they gave him another test, which is to study for Asperger's. And he actually fell under Asperger's, which for any parent, if you understand autism, autism is a spectrum. You have severe autism, mild autism, and over here you have moderate autism, excuse me, then mild autism, and then you have Asperger's. So he was up here with the PDDNOS, which I was told you can never undiagnose. Remember what I told that lady? You can never undiagnose. But with everything that we had done over the years, he didn't fall under mild autism. He fell into Asperger's. So for me, and he has speech now, which is something you need to have when you have Asperger's. So for me, it's a full spectrum, not full circle, and there's still things that he needs to improve on. But where he's at, I'm thankful every day.
Thank you. And where can people get the book? And how can people reach out to you?
All right. Well, this is the book behind me right now. The book is actually has one of my paintings called Countryside. That was my escape where I prayed, and I used that painting on the cover. So you can get the book on Amazon. It's available on paperback and hardcover. The audiobook will be out within the next month or so. We're in the final stages of it this week, so I'm really excited about that. And once that's available, I believe you should be able to get that one on any audio app, as far as listening to and getting it. And to contact me, you can reach me. You can reach me on Instagram under the Temi Ayodeji, or at the Temi Ayodeji. That is a page that I have where I share stress management strategies for doctors and healthcare professionals. If you're one, it's a new account, but you can follow me and stay informed. I also have an account on Instagram, which is at stress.reducing.artist. That's where all my paintings are located. You can go onto my website, which is www.temifinearts.com, or you can go to temiayodeji.com as well to reach me. And you can send me a DM, direct message, and I'll be more than happy to reach back out to you.
Thank you very much for coming on this show and for sharing your story and
Thank you.
also educating us about autism and your experiences, challenges, and triumphs raising a child with autism. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you so much.
And for those of you watching this or listening to this podcast, thank you also for joining us. Until next time, stay blessed. Bye for now.